The church was silent except for the quiet sobs and the faint hum of the organ. Little Emma stood beside her mother's casket, her tiny hands gripping a crumpled drawing. Everyone assumed she was too young to understand what had happened, that her mother's accident was just an unfortunate tragedy. But when she stepped up to speak, her trembling voice cut through the silence like glass. "Mom didn't fall," she whispered. "Someone pushed her!" The room froze. The pastor's mouth went dry and Emma's aunt rushed forward, trying to hush her. But Emma's eyes didn't flinch. For the first time, the truth found a voice, and silence began to crumble. "Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this." Before that day, the Thompsons were known as a quiet, kind family living in a small Midwestern town. Sarah Thompson was a nurse, beloved for her gentle touch and late-night house calls. Her husband, Mark, worked as an electrician, a reserved man who kept to himself. To outsiders, they looked picture-perfect. Tidy house, polite smiles, a little girl who drew sunshine on every page. But neighbors sometimes heard shouting through the thin walls, muffled arguments that stopped when cars passed. Once, Mrs. Calloway next door saw Sarah step outside at dusk, her cheek faintly bruised. When Sarah fell down the stairs one rainy night, everyone accepted it as an accident. The police closed the case in 2 days. Mark cried just enough to look heartbroken. No one questioned anything, except Emma, who had seen it all but didn't yet understand what to do with the truth growing inside her like a storm. After her mother's death, Emma barely spoke. At school, she drew pictures of staircases, red scribbles, and dark stick figures with no faces. Her teacher, Ms. Rivera, noticed but assumed it was grief. "Children express loss differently," she told the counselor. They nodded sympathetically and moved on. At home, Mark kept things normal. He cooked frozen dinners, made Emma say her prayers, and smiled when neighbors visited. But behind closed doors, his control tightened. He forbade Emma from talking about her mother's fall. "It was an accident," he'd snap. "Repeat it." One night, Emma asked softly, "Why was Mom crying before she fell?" Mark froze. His hand twitched. "Enough questions," he growled. Emma stopped asking, but she started writing. She hid notes in her toy box, behind her books, tiny confessions of what she'd seen, the argument, the shove, the scream that ended too quickly. As the funeral approached, her Aunt Clara, Sarah's younger sister, insisted on attending despite Mark's reluctance. Clara had always distrusted him. She noticed how Emma's smile never reached her eyes and how she flinched when her father touched her shoulder. The morning of the funeral, Emma tucked a folded drawing inside her dress pocket. It showed her mother at the top of the stairs and behind her a man's hand pushing. She didn't know it yet, but that picture would shatter the silence adults had built to protect their comfort. When the pastor invited family members to speak, Emma stepped forward on her own. Her voice shook, but she remembered her mom's words from long ago. "If you're scared, speak anyway." That's how bravery begins. The moment Emma said, "Someone pushed her," gasps rippled through the church. Mark's face drained of color. "Sweetheart, you're confused," he said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But Emma pulled the drawing from her pocket and held it up for everyone to see. "This is what I saw," she said, her small fingers trembling. Aunt Clara rushed to her side, her voice shaking. "Emma, honey, who did this?" Emma looked straight at her father. "Daddy did." The air went dead still. For the first time, the townspeople saw something in Mark's eyes they'd missed for years. Cold calculation hiding behind politeness. Clara took Emma's hand and walked her away, while whispers turned to outrage. The sheriff, seated 2 pews back, stood and quietly followed Mark outside. That afternoon, they reopened Sarah Thompson's case. The bruises, the inconsistencies, the quick closure, all resurfaced like ghosts refusing to stay buried. Silence, once safe, had finally broken its own chains. In the weeks that followed, the truth unfolded piece by piece. The staircase told its story through fingerprints and fractured wood. Emma's drawings became evidence. Mark was arrested and the town's guilt ran deep. How many times had they looked away, mistaking fear for clumsiness, control for love? Clara took custody of Emma, vowing she'd never have to stay silent again. On quiet nights, Emma still drew pictures, but now they were of open skies, smiling faces and light through windows. At Sarah's memorial, Ms. Rivera placed a white rose and whispered, "I should have seen." Sometimes, the cost of silence isn't paid by those who choose it, but by those who can't afford it. If silence is protection for some, it's prison for others. So, whose voice is missing today? If you've ever had to prove you belong, share your story. Let's make these conversations visible and help change the skies for everyone. And hey, where are you watching from? Take care.